Thank you so much for staying with tonight. Let's get into that discussion. Dr. Lois Ombajo is joining me now. She's an infectious disease specialist at the University of Nairobi and also the head of infectious disease unit at the Kenyatta National Hospital. Dr. Lois, thank you for making time for us. Is there an amount of exposure to the virus that puts one at risk? So let's get practical. Say if I touch a button of a lift, should I then sanitize immediately?
Hi, Trevor. I guess that's a question that's plaguing all of us. So one, it's not very clear exactly how much of infectious virus would be left on surfaces. But we know that if you touch a contaminated surfaces, someone has sneezed on it, someone has touched their nose and touched a table, touched a doorknob, touched the button in the lift, then it means that some infectious virus or infectious material can be left on those surfaces. And if you touch the surfaces, then again, touch your mouth, touch your nose, then you likely transfer virus from surfaces to your mouth and nose. So because you don't know what's on that knob, what's on that button, I think it's best that you sanitize your hands. So sanitize as much as you can, wash as much as you can. If you're unable to sanitize or wash immediately, then avoid touching your face, your nose or your mouth.
All right. We're increasingly seeing a more cavalier attitude by Kenyans, a return to normalcy of some sorts there. And is there an ounce of truth that the virus in Kenya is less virulent than the one that ravaged Italy and the rest of the countries?
So one, I have to say, it makes us very sad that people are going back to normal, because we know that we are yet to see the worst times of this outbreak. In terms of the virus being less virulent, so what would measure to say that a virus is as virulent or less virulent or more virulent would be how much does it spread, how severe is the disease that it causes. So we know that there have been about 2 strains of virus described so far. The initial one in China seemed to not be as virulent as what was seen later. Having said that, what that means in terms of how the population should be worried or not as worried is not very clear. And for now, we need to be careful. We're not sure that our virus is any different. And as time goes on, we could get different varieties of virus. Some may be less virulent, some may be more virulent, because most viruses undergo something we call mutation, which means they change something about themselves that may make them either bind better or less. So because we still don't know that, we just have to assume that we are all at risk. The virus is as dangerous here as it was in Italy or in New York, and we all have to take precautions.
You have dealt with this disease firsthand, and there are still some Kenyans out there who are now returning back to normal. What would you tell them? What options are you mulling to ensure that they realize how serious this disease is?
Oh, right now, I think I need answers from elsewhere. We have tried to tell Kenyans that this is no longer business as usual. We have seen patients, I personally manage patients and dress up in all this gear to try and protect myself so that I do not get the disease and that I don't spread it to others. And it is real. People get sick. We have lost some people, and it can happen to anyone. So we all need to be careful. We all need to follow those hygiene measures. Wash hands or sanitize frequently, avoid crowded places, wear a mask, and just really take care of yourself. I think the Cabinet Secretary of Health once put it very well when he said, walk around and assume that everybody around you has the virus and you can get it from anybody around you. And we really have to get serious. We are seeing more cases, we are seeing more severe cases, and we'll be seeing more mortality from this. So everybody really needs to take this seriously.
Okay, Dr. Ombajo, before I let you go, should we think of wearing gloves now? Because practically speaking, from the moment you leave your house, you'll touch a doorknob, you'll touch the cars, the handles left, right, and center, lifts, PDQ machines. Should we then start wearing gloves or walk around with sanitizers? How do we ensure we don't get infected?
It would be very useful if you could all walk around with sanitizers, or if there are sanitizers available at several strategic points so that you're able to sanitize or wash hands as frequently as possible. The issue of wearing gloves in public is a tricky one. When you have gloves, people don't wash their hands as much. So whereas you may be protecting yourself, you're not really protecting anyone else, because if you're touching surfaces and not washing your hands or cleaning your hands before you touch other surfaces, then it means you're contaminating several surfaces. So having gloves all day is also not very practical. the best way would be to try and clean or sanitize as much as possible. What I've noticed from observation is that when people wear gloves, they don't remember to clean their hands. So wearing gloves all day is not the way to go. Other concerns that come in with wearing gloves all over is how we dispose of them, because we have to be sure that we're not contaminating other environments by poor disposal. So at this point, the best way would be for people to clean hands, clean common surfaces, things like doorknobs, lift buttons, or such similar surfaces that are touched by several people should be cleaned frequently. Okay. But most important is that we clean our hands.
But what about my clothes? When I get back to the house, am I supposed to remove the clothes and then take a shower before I say hi to anybody? Because we know aerosol now from an infected person stays in the air for about 45 minutes. What if I walked through it and there are droplets all over my clothes?
So the thing about aerosols staying in the environment is something I think that's still being studied quite a bit. The experiments that have shown us that particles stay in the air were really derived from, experimental dispersion of this material under very high pressure. So under those circumstances, you may have something hanging onto the air a little longer. How that works practically on a day-to-day basis is still not very clear to us. So do particles stay in the air much longer? We still don't know. What we know is that most of the droplets tend to drop to surfaces and to the ground fairly soon. So that would mean that if you were just walking through somewhere in the market or somewhere else, you probably won't have too many things on your clothes unless you touched infected material and touched your clothes. So if you're touching doorknobs and wiping your hands on your clothes, then you're transferring infectious material on your clothes. For us in healthcare, because I'll be seeing patients who have COVID or may potentially have COVID, some may be coughing, there may be a lot of contaminated environments where we sit and work. When we get home, we remove those clothes because there's potential for more contamination. But on a day-to-day basis, that may not be very useful.
All right. And finally, we've heard now that there are new emerging symptoms to this, some of it being gastrointestinal infection, some vomiting as well. Can you please try to explain that to us a little bit more? Have we seen any of those new symptoms in Kenya?
Mm-hmm. So we have seen a few different symptoms. So the thing about viral infections is that they'll infect what we call mucosal membranes. And mucosal membranes are in the mouth, the nose, the throat, the lungs, but as well as the gut. So we've seen people who have had some diarrhea. More recently, actually in the last 2 days, we've come across patients who complained about some loss of smell. But the most frequent symptoms that we've seen here has been cough, fever, sore throat, and some running nose. So that's what we've seen most commonly. But as time goes on and we get more patients, we probably see a wider variety of symptoms. So things like diarrhea and abdominal pain have happened. A red eye or itchy eye or painful eye is another thing that we may see.
All right. Thanks, Dr. Lois. Mm-hmm. That's Dr. Lois Ombajo speaking to us live. She's the infectious disease specialist at the University of Nairobi and also the head of infectious disease unit at the Kenyatta National Hospital. You've heard her saying it loud and clear. We're still not out of the woods yet. Wash your hands as much as possible, sanitize, cough into your elbow, wear a mask, keep social distancing. If you can work from home, the better.